Before we go any further, I need to ask you something. Tell us in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Because this story, the one I'm about to tell you, it happened right here in Houston, Texas. And I want to know if anyone out there has lived something like it. Because I believe they have. My daughter called me on a Tuesday morning, and she didn't say a single word. Just breathing. Shallow, careful breathing, like someone trying not to make a sound so they wouldn't be heard. I've been a father for 34 years. I know the difference between a pocket dial and a cry for help that can't speak its own name. I told her I was on my way. She still didn't say anything, but the breathing changed, just slightly, and that was enough. My name is Raymond. I'm 63 years old, retired from 22 years of working freight logistics down at the Port of Houston. I'm not a large man. My hair went gray before I turned 50. My knees ache when it rains. People look at me and see someone's grandfather, someone harmless, someone who doesn't matter much anymore. I've learned that being underestimated is the most useful thing a man my age can possess. My daughter, my youngest, had married a man named Travis Hollis 4 years before that Tuesday morning call. I didn't like him from the start. There was something behind his eyes that reminded me of a dog that bites when no one's looking. Sweet to your face, dangerous the moment you turned away. But she loved him. And when your child loves someone, you make room. What I didn't know, what she hid from me for 3 years, was that Travis had been hitting her since their first anniversary. The first time he cried and apologized, and bought her flowers for a week straight. She told herself it was a mistake. Stress from his job, the economy, the baby, there was always something, and Travis was very good at finding reasons. By the time she called me that Tuesday, my grandson Marcus was 5 years old. He was a quiet boy with his mother's eyes and a habit of flinching when doors slammed too hard. 5 years old and already trained by fear. Already learning to make himself small. I drove the 40 minutes to Beaumont, where she lived, with my hands steady on the wheel and something cold and clear settling in my chest. Not rage, not panic. Just clarity, the kind that only comes when you've already decided what you're going to do. She answered the door in a long-sleeved shirt. August, Houston heat pushing 102 degrees. Long sleeves in August. I didn't say anything about the shirt. I just stepped inside, and I looked at my daughter's face, and I understood 3 years of silence in about 4 seconds. The way she held herself. The way she glanced toward the hallway before she spoke. The way Marcus stayed close to the wall, one hand always touching it, like he needed something solid nearby. "Daddy," she said, and her voice was so careful, so practiced at being small. "You didn't have to come all this way." I sat down at her kitchen table. "Tell me everything," I said. "From the beginning." It took her an hour. She stopped twice, not from emotion but from listening. Checking whether a car had pulled into the driveway, whether she'd heard something outside. An hour to unspool 3 years of careful survival. Travis controlled the money. Travis checked her phone. Oh, Travis had told her, more than once, exactly what would happen to me if I ever got involved. That last part is what he never should have said. "Where is he now?" I asked. "Work," she said. "He gets home at 6. I looked at the clock on her kitchen wall. It was just past noon. "All right," I said. "Then we have time to talk." But I told her next. I told her quietly. And I told her only once. I had a plan. It wasn't going to be clean or comfortable. It was going to require her to trust me completely and do exactly what I said, in exactly the order I said it. She looked at me for a long moment. The way children look at their parents when they're trying to decide whether to believe in something again after believing has let them down. Then she nodded. Travis Hollis had a mother named Connie and a brother named Derek who lived 20 minutes away and came over every Friday without fail. Friday dinner at Travis's house was a tradition Connie had started, and Derek had enthusiastically adopted, mainly because Travis always had beer and Derek never wanted to buy his own. The two of them together were a particular kind of ugly. The kind that feels entitled to its ugliness, that mistakes cruelty for strength because no one has ever pushed back hard enough to show them the difference. Connie had made it clear to my daughter from the very beginning that she considered her inadequate, not good enough for her son, not smart enough, not pretty enough, not grateful enough for the privilege of being chosen by Travis Hollis. She said these things with a smile, which made them worse. Derek mostly just laughed at everything Connie said and helped himself to more beer. My daughter had been enduring Friday dinners for 4 years, cooking for people who insulted her cooking, cleaning for people who left messes, smiling for people who mistook her endurance for weakness. This Friday was going to be different. Travis came home at 6:15 on Tuesday, 20 minutes after I had already left. My daughter greeted him normally. She'd had 3 years of practice performing normalcy. She served the dinner she'd made. She answered his questions in the right tones. She did not once let him see that anything had changed. That night, after he fell asleep, she took photographs of every bruise she could reach. She'd been doing this for 8 months, quietly, on a second phone I hadn't known about. A cheap, prepaid thing she kept in a box of feminine products under the bathroom sink, because Travis never went near that box. 8 months of photographs, dated, organized, backed up to a cloud account he didn't know existed. She sent everything to me that night. By Wednesday morning, I had spoken to an attorney. By Thursday afternoon, I had spoken to a detective at the Beaumont Police Department. A woman named Sergeant Torres, who had been working domestic cases for 11 years and who listened to everything I said without once interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "The photographs alone are significant," she said. "But documentation of ongoing behavior is stronger, if you're willing to wait until we have more." "I'm not waiting," I said. "But I'm not asking you to move early either. I'm asking you to be ready when I call." She looked at me carefully. "What exactly are you planning?" "Nothing illegal," I said. "I'm just going to have dinner with my daughter's family." I arrived at my daughter's house Friday at 4 in the afternoon. Travis was still at work. I helped her cook. She seemed surprised by this, that I knew how to make a proper pot of red beans, that I could dice an onion without tearing up. We talked while we cooked, easy and unhurried, and Marcus sat at the kitchen table, drawing pictures of trucks. Every few minutes he'd hold one up for me to look at. I told him each one was the best truck I'd ever seen. He started drawing faster. At 5:30, Connie arrived without knocking. She had a key Travis had given her. She walked in the way people walk into places they've decided belong to them, scanning the kitchen with small, assessing eyes before her gaze landed on me. "Who are you?" she said. "Raymond," I said. "My daughter's father. You must be Connie. I've heard a lot about you." The way I said it made her pause. She couldn't quite find the insult in it, but she knew it was there. "Travis didn't say anything about company," she said, directing this at my daughter. "It's my house too," my daughter said. She said it quietly, but she said it, and I watched Connie's eyes go sharp. Derek arrived 20 minutes later, already carrying a 12-pack like a man who'd learned not to trust other people's hospitality. He took in the situation, me at the kitchen table, Connie's expression, my daughter standing straighter than usual, and immediately adopted the position he always took, cheerful, useless, backing whoever seemed most likely to win. Travis walked in at 6:10. He saw me before he saw anything else, and something shifted in his face. Fast, almost invisible, but I've been watching people for 63 years. I saw it. He wasn't afraid of me. That was the problem, and also, as it turned out, the solution. "Raymond," he said with the particular warmth of someone who wants you to know he's tolerating your presence. "This is a surprise." "Thought I'd come see my grandboy," I said. "Hope that's all right with you." The last 4 words were deliberate. He heard the challenge in them and decided to ignore it, which told me exactly what I needed to know about how he saw me. Dinner was its own kind of theater. Connie made comments about the beans, not enough seasoning, an odd choice for the weather. She'd made them better at Travis's birthday 3 years ago. Derek laughed on cue. Travis ate without complimenting the food, which was its own statement. Marcus sat beside me and ate everything on his plate without being asked. which struck me as the saddest small thing I'd witnessed in years. A 5-year-old who'd learned to cause no trouble at dinner. I was quiet through most of it. Pleasant, agreeable. I asked Derek about his work and actually listened to the answer. I asked Connie how long she'd been living in the area. I let Travis hold court at the head of his table and say nothing to challenge it. I was exactly what they expected. A harmless old man, tolerated, easy to dismiss. After dinner, while my daughter was putting Marcus to bed, I was alone in the kitchen washing dishes. Connie came in for something from the refrigerator and found me there, and the sight of me doing dishes in what she considered her son's house offended something deep in her. "You know," she said in the tone of someone about to do you a favor, "my son is a good provider, whatever she's told you." "She hasn't told me anything," I said pleasantly. I kept washing dishes. "He takes care of this family." "I can see that," I said. She waited for me to say something she could argue with. I didn't give her anything. This bothered her more than an argument would have. "She's always been dramatic," Connie said. "Sensitive. Travis has the patience of a saint." "I'm sure he does," I said. When my daughter came back downstairs, I told her I was going to head home. Long drive, old knees. She knew how it was. I hugged her at the door. She held on a moment longer than usual. "Sunday," I said quietly, close to her ear. She understood. I drove 40 minutes back toward Houston and pulled into a rest stop off I-10. I sat in my car and waited. At 9:17, she texted me a single word. "Now." I called Sergeant Torres. What I had not told Connie and Derek and Travis was that before dinner, I had helped my daughter do one other thing. In the living room, on the bookshelf, between a ceramic rooster and a stack of cookbooks that no one ever opened, I had placed a small device the size of a cheap lip balm tube. My son-in-law's house, my daughter had explained to the attorney, was also her legal residence, which she paid into with her own income, which meant she had every right to record conversations that occurred there. Sergeant Torres had explained to me, very carefully and very patiently, exactly what Texas law permitted. I had listened carefully. The recording ran for 3 hours and 42 minutes after I left. Most of it was television, but at 11:18, after Marcus was long asleep, Travis said something to my daughter in the kitchen that Connie and Derek were still around to hear. He said it the way men like him say things when they think they're safe. The contempt, fully visible, the threat underneath it, plain as daylight. My daughter said quietly, "My father was here today because I asked him to be." Travis's response lasted 47 seconds. I will not repeat it. But every word was on the recording, and Connie laughed at 2 separate points, and Derek said, "Damn bro," in an admiring tone, and my daughter said nothing because she was waiting, because I had told her to wait. When Travis raised his hand, she stepped back and said one word. "Don't." He hit her anyway. She called 911. She was on the phone before he understood what was happening. Sergeant Torres had 2 officers at the house in 9 minutes. I was pulling back into the neighborhood 4 minutes after that. By the time I walked through the front door, Travis was in handcuffs on his own front porch, still trying to explain that it wasn't what it looked like, that she was hysterical, that I had probably put her up to something. Connie was standing in the doorway telling an officer that her son would never. Derek had found a moment to slip out the back, which the officers noted for later. Sergeant Torres met me on the porch. She had listened to the first 20 minutes of the recording on her drive over. "You said nothing illegal," she said. "Nothing illegal," I confirmed. She almost smiled. "Your daughter's going to be all right." Marcus was sitting on the couch when I came inside, still in his pajamas, holding his knees to his chest. He'd heard the sirens and come downstairs and found something he'd never seen in that house before. People his father could not charm or frighten into compliance. He was watching everything with those huge, careful eyes. I sat down next to him. "Hey, bud." "Grandpa Raymond," he said. "Is Mama okay?" "Your Mama's more than okay," I told him. "Your Mama's one of the bravest people I've ever known, and you know what she's going to be even more of starting right now?" He shook his head. "Safe," I said. He thought about that for a moment with the serious concentration of a 5-year-old processing something enormous. "Are we going somewhere?" he asked. "We're going to my house for a while," I said. "You can bring your trucks." He looked down at his hands, then he looked back up at me. "All of them?" "Every single one," I said. Travis was arrested that night. The recording, combined with the photographs, combined with 3 years of medical records my daughter had never connected into a pattern for any single doctor, but which Sergeant Torres connected in about 20 minutes, added up to something that Travis's attorney was going to have a very difficult time in front of a judge. Connie called my daughter 9 times the following morning. My daughter did not answer. On the 10th call, my daughter answered and said 3 sentences. She was filing for divorce, she was filing for full custody, and she would be seeking a restraining order that included Connie and Derek by name. Then she hung up. The restraining order was granted. The divorce took 7 months. Fadi, my daughter got the house, which she promptly sold, and used the money to put a down payment on a place in Houston, 12 minutes from mine. Marcus started kindergarten that fall, at a school where no one knew him as someone's frightened boy. He made a friend named Jerome in the first week, and the two of them spent recesses running around yelling about things I could never quite follow. Normal, loud, careless 5-year-old noise. The most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Connie wrote me a letter once. Handwritten, 4 pages. I read all 4 pages, which was more than she deserved. It was mostly about how I had manipulated her son's downfall, how I had set him up, how I had turned a good family man into a criminal through scheming. She used the word scheming 4 times. She also said that Travis came from a good family, as though the letter were not itself evidence of exactly the opposite. I thought about writing back. Then I thought about Marcus running around that schoolyard with Jerome, hollering about nothing in particular. I put the letter in the recycling bin and went to make dinner. There's something I want to say to you if you'll stay with me a moment longer. People will tell you that age takes things from you. Your speed, your strength, the things that made you dangerous when you were young. And some of that is true. I'm slower than I was. My knees are a problem. I cannot do most of what I could do at 35. But here's what 63 years gives you that 35 never could. Patience, the kind that doesn't run out. The ability to sit at a table with people who despise you and smile and eat your beans and wait. The understanding that the most effective move is often the one no one sees coming, because they've already decided you don't matter enough to watch. Travis Hollis never saw me coming, neither did Connie. They looked at me and saw a harmless old man who drove 40 minutes to see his grandbaby and didn't know enough to stay out of things that didn't concern him. They were wrong on every count. It concerned me deeply. And I had been planning since the moment I heard my daughter's silence on that Tuesday morning phone call. Here is what I want you to understand, and I mean this for every person listening who has a daughter, or a son, or a sister, or a brother, or anyone they love, who is surviving something they haven't said out loud yet. The signs are there before the first hit. They are there in the flinching, in the long sleeves in August, in the way someone laughs a little too quickly to smooth things over, in the child who has learned to make himself small. Notice those signs. Don't wait for proof that's already written in bruises. Ask the questions that are harder to ask. Sit at the kitchen table and say, "Tell me everything, from the beginning." And then do not move until you have heard it all. I'm not telling you to do what I did. What I did required specific circumstances, specific patience, specific help from people who knew the law better than I do. I'm not a hero. I'm a grandfather who was paying attention. But I am telling you this. The people who depend on you are not always going to be able to ask for help in words. Sometimes all they can do is breathe into a phone and hope that the person on the other end has been paying enough attention to understand. Be that person. Whatever it cost you, be that person. My daughter called me last Sunday morning. She and Marcus had made pancakes, and Marcus had added so many blueberries that the batter turned purple. And she was calling to tell me this because she knew it would make me laugh. And it did. I laughed until my eyes watered, standing in my kitchen, 63 years old, knees aching, not a single thing in the world wrong with my life. She's safe. He's safe. Some mornings that feels like the whole world. If this story reached something in you tonight, share it with someone you think might need to hear it. And leave me a comment. Not just where you're listening from, though I want to know that too. But tell me about someone who stood up for you when you couldn't stand for yourself. Or tell me about a time you stood up for someone else. I read every single one. Every voice matters here. That's what this channel is built on. This is Voices of Uncle Raymond. Thank you for being here.